ask you to
There we go.
record
I'm doing both.
so I can continue.
Yes, thank you.
Since everyone is present and we have begun recording, will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the
To the flag
of
the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So Kathy, for the purposes of attendance, I can see that all of the board members, all the trustees are present and accounted for. And we also have joining us beside yourself and Karen, Molly Robbins. I don't see any members of the public tonight. The meeting has been called to order, and the first order of business is the approval of the prior meeting minutes. And we have two. One meeting was a regular October meeting on the 19th, and the second meeting was a special meeting on the 26th. And everyone was present. If they're want to take a moment and review it, if you haven't had a chance, we'll entertain any questions or comments. And if there are no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to accept both of the prior meeting minutes. And a second. And all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any abstentions or nays? There being none, they both carry. We won't need any public comment session tonight. So Karen, if you're ready, we can proceed with the director's report and personnel report.
Sure. So in anticipation of or in response to the rising numbers of COVID and in anticipation of them going higher, we have held steady on our services and haven't added any new services for the month of November. We did move curbside up to the front, which seems to be going very well, but that's really the only big change that we made. We are still, I'm sorry, the repair to AC 5 of our HVAC system, we were waiting on additional breakdown from the proposal that we were given, which I did subsequently receive. So we are moving ahead on that, and they are ordering the parts that are necessary. Same with the stormwater system. We received the information and we are moving ahead on that. We'll be scheduling that work later this month. We had Canopy Roofing in to look at a leak on one portion of our roof in the building, and I will let you know their verdict when I learn that from John Tortoso. The fiber connection, which we were waiting on installation for, happened last week, so that's very exciting. NSC will be working with us now on installing our new network and our new Wi-Fi, and we will be dropping, we had discussed this at the last meeting, we're dropping 33 WLS devices as of January 1st, 2021. Most of those are public devices. And we will be dropping an additional 8 devices as well as the WLS Wi-Fi as of the end of March, which gives us a little bit of breathing time. Right now, we don't have much demand at all for public computer use. So we are using this sort of hiatus on that service to get ourselves situated on our own network with our own public computers, focusing a lot right now on laptops and Chromebooks because of the situation that we find ourselves in due to COVID. Allison and I are researching a new phone system. Our phone system is from when the building was built, and while it is a good solid phone system, it doesn't allow us a whole lot of flexibility when we find ourselves having to work remotely, as well as other times. But we both suffered from sticker shock when we saw not necessarily the costs of the new phone system itself, but all of the licensing fees that they now do because of the hosted services that they use. So Allison and I are going to be working with NSC to see if there are some other options out there that we could use using technology. We'll be talking about the printer contract later in the agenda, so I won't mention that too much now. We have a committee of directors of the PLDA on a committee called the IT Options Committee. We are directors who are moving on to our own technology systems and are looking to interface with WLS from that standpoint. We're also sharing information about E-rate, sharing information about technology consultants. Right now, we're working with negotiating with WLS about how to access the computer system with as little problem as possible. I am researching E-rate consultants. I filed for E-rate on my own last year, which was quite an experience. If we can make it work financially, I think I would prefer to go with a consultant going forward. I don't know if it's going to work financially. If it doesn't, then I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. But it's a very complex process, especially the Category 2 funding, which is for wiring and equipment. And I want to make sure that we get it right and that I do all of the filings in the proper way and not by the skin of my teeth. It's also a lot of time, but I'll get you more information on that as I move ahead. We're moving ahead on creating the personnel evaluation forms. I was very happy that we had a meeting with Grant Schneider while we were sort of in the beginning of this process, because he gave us, myself, Molly, and the department heads, some good guidance as to sort of how to focus our performance evaluation process so that it is more goal-oriented. And we all thought as a team that that would be a very productive way to move ahead. It just made for some minor tweaking on the forms that we had already created, but I think it's going to be good going forward. One of the things that we're working on right now is planning for the possibility that staff will be sent to work remotely again, either all or in part. Allison has worked on making sure that we have the technology that we need to do that. We'd like to do that in a more orderly fashion this time than we had to do last time around. I have a feeling that we'll probably be staggering some people working from home sooner rather than later so that we can reduce the numbers of people in the various areas of our building. So I'll let you know more about that as we go along. Also planning for Allison Robbins' maternity leave, which will be a very wonderful time for her and a very stressful time for me. But she has everything sorted out in spreadsheets and shared documents. She's got all of her roles and responsibilities assigned to other people. And I have no doubt that things will go very smoothly.
Do you have a date for her leave?
Well, babies come when they come, but December 5th is the expected due date.
Oh.
So who's carrying the burden, the majority of her responsibilities?
I would say it's shared between
Mallory.
Mallory, Diana, myself. I would say the three of us are probably the three who are mostly going to be carrying that work when she's out.
And how long is she out for?
She plans to come back towards the middle or end of February.
Okay,
She's
so
gonna
3
be
months.
Yeah, she's going to be coming back for a short period of time on a part-time basis. And then she plans to be back to full-time about mid-March.
It's her first baby?
Second.
Oh, second. Oh, so she'll be.
She knows the drill.
Yeah, if she's your second, you throw them on the floor and change her diaper. So it's totally different.
Yeah, it'll be great.
So Karen, you're obviously enthused that she wants to come back.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I think I would be in tears if she wasn't. The First Village Coffee donated some lovely goodies to our staff as a thank you for all of their hard work during COVID. That was really nice. We all put together a thank you card for them that we signed, which is great. Election day went smoothly. I think we discussed that when we were last together, so I won't go too much into that. Mallory is still working on the virtual annual meeting that she's putting together. I think I'm the holdup right now. She's got a lot of what she needs to go, and I have to record a few things, so hopefully I can get to that soon. And there were just a couple other things I wanted to point out from the reports from the departments. I can find them. Mallory's wrapping up her year with Nonprofit Westchester Emerging Leaders Program. She says that she's gotten a lot out of that program and is happy to have participated in it. It looked a little different because she wasn't able to physically visit the different organizations, but she made the most of it. Marie Pierre applied for and was accepted to the New York Library Association's Developing Leaders Program cohort, which is a training program on leadership skills, and it's a really good program. So I'm happy for her, and I know that she'll get a lot out of that. And I think that's everything that I wanted to point out. Do you have any questions for me about any of that?
There was good stuff in the report. I checked out the Sparta Cemetery tour before our meeting started. That was excellent.
Yeah, it was very well received.
The collections and programming team is doing neat stuff too.
I agree. I have two questions for you. First, Marie had mentioned that you're still getting back or working on getting back pre-pandemic items.
Yes.
Are there many outstanding items? I was surprised to hear that.
The outstanding items are from prior to when we shut down. And during the pandemic, we stopped sending out notices to people. And so we resumed sending notices, I want to say mid-September, which is why those are starting to come back. There was a hiatus there when we were not encouraging people to bring things back.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I have a question from Molly, who gave us a monthly visitor count, August, September, and October. And I was wondering, did you used to do monthly visitor counts? And how does this, if so, how does this compare to what it used to be?
You're on mute.
You're muted, Molly.
Now she's
I think Molly might be having trouble getting her mute off.
okay.
I can try to answer that question for you, though Molly always knows the numbers better than I do. Our visitor counts, yeah, Molly just texted me. She's got a bad connection, so she's going to try to get back in. Our visitor counts are obviously much lower than normal times. And we have been taking the door counts. I mean, we've been taking them from many, many moons because we report that all out on our annual meeting, or I'm sorry, on our annual report to the state.
Thank you.
Sure.
So if there are no other questions or comments for Karen, we'll move into the committee reports. First one being the president's report. Everyone should have received an email forwarded by Karen letting us know that the WLS is having its annual meeting this Thursday. They notified the directors of the system of all the 38 libraries, but did not notify the trustees. And there are approximately 190 trustees in the system that were not notified. I didn't even call them to find out why. So we'll discuss it a little further within one of the resolutions that's on our agenda tonight, registering a complaint with their inaction and inattentiveness to their responsibilities. On a more positive note, in the packet tonight is a sample of a board evaluation that comes through the American Library Association. And it's not on the agenda because I wanted everyone to have a chance to look at it. And I think philosophically, it makes a lot of sense for the trustees to evaluate ourselves. And I think this is a very good document. It may not be perfect, but I would suggest that we consider using it. And if there are some flaws or hiccups, we can always fix them. But overall, I think it's a terrific document, very thorough, very straightforward. I encourage everyone to take a look at it, and we will have it on the agenda at our next meeting and formally vote whether we will institute an annual or some other schedule of regular evaluations. And any questions or comments on that?
I was excited to see it because, you know, when it talked about our participation or engagement in local politics and in fundraising, lobbying, I thought this is really good. So, yeah, I'll be studying that more closely.
Well, just to let you know, I've been pushing for this for years, and so I'm really happy to see it. I may have even shared this link earlier, but there's an additional link from the Mid-Hudson that also has just a form. And that's where we got, or where I suggested that we use the library director's evaluation form that later was revised and updated. So there actually is a form that's like a brief listing of categories that would go along with this more complex, you know, report that the United for Libraries put out. But if you want, I'll send that link again as well, because I think that this is really important. I've always said that we should evaluate ourselves. So good thing.
And that's progress.
Yep.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask if I could get a copy of it. I can pick it up at the library. It's a 24 plus page
29 page
document. And something like that, I do better if I read a hard copy. So if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know.
Are we supposed to fill it out?
No, what I'd like to do is give everyone a chance to look it over. It may not take you more than a few minutes, but by the same token, I don't see any reason to ask you to vote on something that you really haven't had a chance to look at.
It's a 29-page document. It won't take us a few minutes. You know, I mean, it's a lot to fill out.
Well, that'll be the point of when next month, when it's on the agenda, and we vote whether to adopt it, and then we'll proceed on filling it out and collating it and seeing what the results are.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you don't fill out all 29 pages. It's just a background guide on how to do it. You know, the actual evaluation is very brief, like Matt said. It's just a few minutes to fill out the actual one. So, but it basically is an argument for why you should do it. That's why I think it's really nicely written. Because if we're evaluating everyone else, then we should always evaluate ourselves as well. So.
Oh, yeah, I think it's so
Yeah.
transparent. If we can say to our patrons or anyone else who asks, you know, how do you evaluate the library? Well, you evaluate the director, certainly. Now evaluating staff or evaluating trustees.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that any tax-paying member of our community will get their dollar's worth with this effort. So the next item is policy and bylaws and personnel. Amanda, if I could ask if you wanted to introduce some of the policy.
Okay, I'm happy to. We had a committee meeting recently and went over these policies. And the vulnerable adults policy, this is basically policy which was written for us for the first time. It's not a renewal of any kind. And I think it is succinct and to the point. And not only does it give the librarians direction on, you know, vulnerable adults and what to do, but we've also, I believe that when Karen brought it to the department heads, they also suggested that we add to it various organizations and their contact information. So this policy has gone through a review by the people in the library, and now it's being put forth to you for your review. I'm going to go next to the Internet Acceptance Use Policy with the CIP.
Amanda, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Question about the vulnerable adults policy.
Yeah.
I do remember the first part, and I'm trying to pull it up in front of me, but I read through it, and I still have a lot of concerns about what sounds like that that the library is being responsible for making sure that someone that is in the library independently has a contact number and other information of that type. I'm not sure how that would happen in terms of, you know, I guess connecting with the person that dropped the person off, or it still sounds like the library is taking responsibility for some things that's really not the library's responsibility. Also, when we're talking about adults, what age are we talking about? From what
Over
to what?
18. Over 18. Anybody over 18 is what it says.
Okay. Okay. I didn't remember the exact number. So it also doesn't sound consistent with sort of the expectation of what's going to happen with the other 18-year-olds that are in the library. So I just had a question about that in terms of, you know, how you all saw it when, you know, you reviewed it.
I thought the language was pretty specific about the library would not be responsible for family members who don't show up to pick up their person they're responsible for. If we have early closing, it's not up to us to drive that person back home. I mean, that language keeps recurring. And the revision, which was in red in the final paragraph, I thought was really good because it listed all of these resources and organizations that are equipped to support and aid people in this community.
Yeah, I thought that the last paragraph was good as well.
Right.
But the repetition of saying that you're not going to do something, but yet there still was the part talking about, and I'm not, first of all, I'm not sure, how is the public going to know that the library is not going to be responsible? The library is not going to do it because it's not, and no one's going to become aware of it until it happens. And so how will you, how will the library communicate that, A, to the people that are dropped off independently, or to the person, you know? I guess what I'm saying is, are you going to walk up to the person and say, hey, you know, this is our policy on vulnerable adults? How is that going to happen? I don't understand that.
I can tell you how we handle it now.
Mm-hmm.
There, let me unmute myself. I can tell you how we handle it now and how I see this policy as being of use. We don't make judgments on people unless there becomes an issue or we have an observation that brings an issue to our attention. So we wouldn't necessarily be going to, you know, a person and trying to determine whether or not they were a vulnerable adult unless we see certain behaviors. We have had a situation recently that is an ongoing situation. And once we determined that the person, in this particular case, it's a memory issue. Once we determined that this individual may be a vulnerable adult, then we made an effort to get the contact information of her spouse, which I have now because there have been so many incidents with this particular individual. And I've had conversations with the spouse. So in conversations with the spouse, I tell him, you know, we don't have a policy to point to right now, but I do tell him, you know, this is our practice in the library. This is what we can do. This is what we can't do. And here's what we're seeing going on with your wife. And here's what we need from you. So, you know, when it comes to vulnerable adults, for the most part, we're not necessarily going to be having these conversations or these interactions unless we start to see behaviors or problems bubble up. Does that make sense?
It does, but I guess my concern is that the fact that it's ongoing, that you have to keep speaking to this person, even though you've addressed, you went about, you addressed it, you addressed the person, you have their number. That's what I'm saying. At what point, it doesn't seem like there's necessarily a resolution, a consequence, whatever, in terms of trying to resolve that issue with a problem. I can tell you about a particular situation that I experienced with another patron, where young guy, I'm sure you know who he is, long hair, he wears a hat, he appears to be autistic to me. This is just my observation, but there were a few times where he actually was quite aggressive toward me in terms of, just staring, proximity. And I was like, wow, does this kid come in here like this all the time? And then one particular day, I saw somebody talking to him about his behavior. That's how does the policy really address a situation like that? Or like, bottom line, that the library can't do X, Y, and Z, but in the meantime, there's stuff happening.
You were breaking up a lot, Shandi, so you were breaking up a lot, Shandi, but I think
there is, group that out of, I can't remember the hospital in Harrison.
Oh, Shandi, you're
she's on
muted
mute.
now.
That might not be, I don't know, that might not be needed at the library, but I'm just wondering. Like I said, it's just a concern.
Unfortunately, I missed a lot of what you said, Shandi, because I don't know if my connection was bad or what.
Oh, it might have been mine. Okay.
No, I was hearing like every other word, unfortunately.
Okay.
It was very broken up.
Basically, what I was saying was there is a county group of people that come out to situations with people who are having behavioral issues. And at what point would the library let somebody else solve that rather than take on?
My understanding of this from like a staff perspective,
or that not
is kind of like, with children, we won't act in loco parentis. This is our way of saying these people may be in the building, but we can't take responsibility for them if they wander off the premises.
Right, I got that. I got that part.
In some ways, the behavior thing is more covered by, why can't I think of the full name of the policy? The expected behavioral policy. Now, if somebody were clearly having some kind of breakdown, I think the staff would just sort of call the police and explain the situation. I don't know how well the staff would do it, sort of figuring out what the breakdown was.
Well, in the policy, the last paragraph, you reference County Adult Protective Services, Children and Family Services, and you reference the crisis text line, the crisis response line. And they're a very, very good service. I don't know how quickly, if you call County Protective Services, are they just going to come up? I don't.
No,
that's a very.
I can tell
Yeah,
you
I
that
don't know.
because I did do that in this particular individual's case who we're working with right now. And, you know, they did assign a caseworker to her. They did go to the home and check out the situation, but it wasn't an immediate thing. They're not going to come on site and deal with the immediate problem. Unfortunately, with this individual who we've been dealing with recently, a couple of us who've been dealing with her have had to step in and try to work with her, try to contact her husband.
Well, that is
We
progress. I mean,
we did call we had her call an ambulance for herself once, and we facilitated that for her because the behavior was so extreme, and she did end up going to Phelps.
okay.
I think Shandi brings up a very good point, though, which is how many times or how frequently should the library be responsible to take care of repeated instances where an individual who is a vulnerable adult needs intervention? And that is not mentioned in the policy the way in which it's written. And I don't know if you want to put a number on there, or if we just want to put in vulnerable adults who have repeated or instances that require librarians' intervention will be referred to a service, you know, something along that line. I don't remember even
Yeah, I would
considering
agree
this
with
when
that.
we were going through.
I even think maybe we need to pass it along to some of those organizations that bring some of the adults there, and some of them will leave them. Some of them allow them to go upstairs and leave them unattended while they're outside taking a cigarette break, or they're kind of doing whatever they want. I mean, you know, I don't know if that's something that we could do, or if the policy has ever even been shared with them. I mean, of course, since the library was closed, they haven't done it, but when the library was open, they were doing it, I mean, like every day.
Because we haven't had a policy, there's been no policy to share.
Okay.
But we have had incidents where we've had to call the supervisors of the group home because the individual, the aide who was responsible for the group, was leaving the room or letting people wander about, or otherwise not attending to the individuals.
So is the issue related to the group home that comes, or is the issue related to individuals, or both?
We have both issues in the library.
Okay.
I don't know if all of you remember, but someone who was very interested in this issue is Debbie Goddard. And she was, participant or president of the special ed schools group. And she was very much tied in with a lot of area organizations. And I'm just wondering, in addition to maybe I'm not saying whether you did or didn't get additional outside review of this policy, but it might be helpful. Because Debbie was very interested in this. Do you remember this, Alice, that she would mention?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the policy overall is a good one, but I think the questions people have raised are really, really good questions. Or points that have been
She
made.
works for WIHD, and if my recollection is correct, she works dealing with children, not adults.
Well, her son is an adult, though.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I'm just saying, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
She was that was then when her child was a child. I mean, she's moved along to whatever stage he's in, is what I'm trying to say. So
I guess the only point I was making is someone who has had either developmental issues or the vulnerability issue of someone not being fully competent to take care of themselves or whatever, would maybe have some suggestions for us, either in language or maybe a little more clarity or something. I don't know. But yeah, the issues are so wide ranging. So when Shandi mentioned, what is this policy, what age group? If it's above 18, that means you could have a 60-year-old you're dealing with, or
Of course.
yeah. So, and the issues are also very different. And with a lot of the mental issues that people have to contend with, it's
And
one of
that's
the
what-
big
that's why
issues in
I'm saying-
library schools, talking about this when you're trying to train people, and then when you're on actually, you know, in urban settings. I worked for a while in an urban setting, and there was a drop-off every day around noontime of limited adults, and they would come into the library en masse, and we had lots and lots of problems. And we did have policies, but it was really difficult. There were so many of them because it was kind of like, here, you deal with them. It was like their field trip to the library, but many of them weren't really able to be on their own. So thank goodness we don't have that severe a problem, but
Well, that's one of the things I like about this policy is there's the statement, vulnerable adults who are unable or unwilling to care for themselves must be attended and have adequate supervision at all times.
yes.
So if somebody is repeatedly dropping someone off, we could present them with this policy and say, you know, you think this is a safe place for your grandmother or your, you know, young adult, but the fact of the matter is they do need to be supervised. We can't do that for you. And that would be terrible. So it gives us that. And I know staff are also, if somebody's in the building who clearly needs some assistance and we've closed, staff look for that guidance to say, all right, if we can't find someone to take care of them, what do I do? Well, you call the police, that's okay. It's closed, we can't leave this person out here in the cold and dark. And this policy lets the staff know it's okay, you tried, and now we're gonna call somebody.
Isn't that the default on the children's policy too, the unattended children? The calling the police is the last action.
Right. And we have had it happen where the building has closed and no one is coming to collect someone who clearly needs some sort of guidance. And the staff stay with them for hours.
Right.
So, you know, we give it 15 minutes. We try to reach a contact. If we can't, then we reach out to the police to help protect them until somebody gets there.
I guess what I'm saying, going back to what Amanda was saying, I think there needs to be a number because they're not different people. And so while, you know, I believe that what Karen has done has been extremely caring and patient and all those things, I believe that, but really be doing that, and shouldn't the agencies that are paid to do that work and assist the library in working with these individuals?
Shandi, I was saying I don't know that there should be a number. I think it's probably up to the library. It should be the library's discretion, because some people can be far more demanding than others in their actions. So it could be almost, you know, one or maybe two visits and the library says, wow, we really need the help of the family or the organization with this vulnerable adult. And others, it may be so insignificant, but it becomes repetitive. And after a while, you know, Karen or other librarians would go, we need to do something here. I think a simple line added to the second paragraph, the end of the second paragraph, should do it, to capture that. And I wouldn't want to make it too detailed. I wouldn't want to make us sound like a social services organization. We are a library.
Exactly.
You know, and I've been reading the unattended children policy, and all of this is basically captured in the unattended children policy. So I think we're fine there when it comes to children. We don't need to add them in here.
Oh, no, I wasn't insinuating. It's just, it's kind of like the same policy, but with vulnerable adults. Do we have a situation where we have vulnerable adults and we don't have the contact information for a responsible adult?
Since in my experience, we've always managed to get the contact information in some way, shape, or form.
Like the person that you're speaking about, the husband is aware that the wife pre-COVID hung out at the library, I would imagine.
Yes.
Or some staff member may know the family, or
Yeah,
if the
yeah.
library card, we can call the home number and
Yeah.
see if we reach out to somebody in the family.
Right. So it seems like, I mean, I don't know if we have much more to discuss on this now, right?
I just had a quick question, Karen. I don't remember our policy with, you know, the newsletter, but do we mention or highlight any of the policies in that newsletter? Because couldn't we do that with this one?
We can.
Or start doing that, just sort of like, here are some changes that we've made recently, just so you should be aware of them and
We
kind of
certainly
lightly. Yeah.
can. Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if that captures it all, though. I don't know how many, is our newsletter pretty comprehensive now? Since we're,
Well, we do just the email newsletter now. That goes out.
but I mean,
about
are
three-
more of our people in town using it since our hours have shortened?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
More people are using that, and more people are using that than even the paper newsletter that we used to do. So we're
Yeah,
getting a broader
yeah.
reach at this point.
Oh, good, good.
Well, Mallory's newsletters that she sends out are so good.
They're
Yeah.
fun.
I love the
Yeah.
Friday Five. I love that. Tell her that. So
I
she
will.
does such a great
She'll
job.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. So internet policy.
Can I just to really quickly drafted a line. I just want to see if this might be along the line of where we go after the second paragraph. If we just add a sentence, vulnerable adults who have repeated instances requiring assistance from the library will be what? Maybe it should be the family or organization who is responsible will be contacted of those vulnerable adults who have repeated instances requiring assistance from the library. Does that work?
I think that's good. Yeah, I think that's good.
Sounds
Amanda.
good.
Amanda, would you mind shooting that verbiage over to me and Kathy so that Kathy can get it in there?
I will.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
So what's next?
Internet acceptable use policy. And what Karen learned is that in our policy, we did not have the appropriate language for the CIPA information. I don't know if Karen, you'd like to explain that further?
Sure.
It's number 3 on the policy. It's a whole new section.
It's a whole new
Yeah.
section. So a number of years ago, WLS started applying for E-rate funding to provide the connectivity for all the libraries. And WLS changed when you receive E-rate funding, you have to put certain language in your internet policies, and you have to provide filters on your internet service. The filters can be turned off, the filters can be set however strictly or loosely you choose, but they have to be there. WLS has had filters on essentially our connection ever since they did up their policy, and I want to say it was sometime in 2017. But my mistake, we never added anything to our policy in regards to the SEPA language. Frankly, I think WLS should have had us do that, but whatever, they did it for their own policy. Now that we are getting E-rate funding for our connectivity, in it, no matter what, we have to have this similar wording in our policy, letting people know that we are SEPA compliant and how we're SEPA compliant. So I asked WLS if I could use their verbiage, and they said yes. And that's what you will see in the draft of this revised policy. Essentially, it's not a change. It's a change in our policy, but it's not a change in our actual what happens in our library. We made some other minor changes, but good changes. to sort of clean up the wording a little bit to make our internet policy a little bit more reflective of the times. So, you know, we changed the word computer equipment to devices, computers to devices. And then we also removed a statement which is wrong right now. The printing is not available via the library's Wi-Fi service, but it is. So we took that out.
Thank you. Any questions?
So it's just that one section change, really,
It's really the
to
one
bring it
section
into
change.
compliance.
The other three or 4 changes are very, very minor.
Mhm. And then we have the law enforcement inquiries.
Okay, so we're done with the internet policy now, right?
First reading.
First reading. Okay, I'm just trying to close them all as we, because we don't have printouts, so I've got like so many things open on my desktop that tons of things keep crashing. So we're doing law enforcement now? Okay.
Yes. And Matt, would you like to talk about that one? Since no?
No.
Okay. Well, we thought it was time to review for us as a board the law enforcement inquiries policy that is in place. It's not our intention really to change it, but to be aware of what we have as a policy. Because this is when inquiries are being made. And we wanted to assure the public and ourselves as a board that we are comfortable with anyone who is making an inquiry. We were concerned about things such as immigrants and someone coming.
I was going to say ICE.
Yeah.
So the bottom line
Yeah,
is that it's referred to the director, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And that actually, Karen, you may or may not remember that Neighbors Link had suggested some language for organizations, and we didn't actually adopt it. But the bottom line is always refer them to the director or the librarian in charge. And I might suggest that maybe we have some sort of training from Neighbors Link for those individuals, so that if an ICE request comes in, we handle it properly.
Well, this also ties in directly with intellectual freedom. And so as Karen knows, it may be, parts of it might be utilized by people resisting, unlawful ICE regulations, but it's also for everyone. So that your reading habits and whatever you're investigating or researching is not up for review. I mean, that's intellectual freedom. So that's like a key library constraint. So I don't even know if that's mentioned in this, but I think that should definitely be utilized somehow. The Patriot Act was really a terrible thing to have been passed into law, and it has a lot of restrictions, that if we're a free people, we shouldn't have to be under this. But anyway, have people read the Patriot Act? It was written before 9/11.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's horrible. It's horrible.
I thought it was written in response to 9/11.
No, it was written before.
Oh, okay.
Because they so quickly passed it,
Yeah.
But yeah,
nobody
it
read it.
seems like all the steps are here, and so this all makes a lot of sense to me and everything. I would just say that the intellectual freedom component is really, as a librarian myself, the thing that I'm most concerned about. That's sort of an umbrella that covers all of us, as well as anyone who is an undocumented worker or an immigrant to our country or whatever, in terms of their citizenship status. So.
I think that information period that is being requested by the police might be something that as the Village is looking at their policing reform, that, you know, that might be something that could be submitted to them in order to, you know, that is something that they need to take a look at when they're looking at their big picture, you know, with their reform committee.
All I can tell you is the ALA and a lot of librarians around the country are pushing back, though, against a lot of local police departments who are overstepping, basically. It's one thing if you have a real need or an individual or some real threat, but this is being used a lot to intimidate people and, you know.
Well, that's why I'm saying that,
Yeah.
since those type of overreach is
Yeah,
what's
okay.
being looked at, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And it
Okay.
it hasn't happened here, but I have to tell you from a previous library, I had an experience as a very young library director being intimidated. They were trying to intimidate me into giving me information that they did not have a warrant or a subpoena for. It was it was very difficult.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's why I was suggesting that, you know, Karen, if there's a librarian in charge, we have to make sure that they are well trained in this situation.
Yes.
Not just for Neighbors Link, but for basic law enforcement situations too.
And as part of the LICP training that we do for our staff, we were going to be doing one in March, but it didn't happen. As part of that training, we go through the law enforcement inquiry policy so that they are aware of what they need to do in that situation, which is pretty much call Karen.
Yeah.
Right. And the ICE situation, there are a lot of nuances for the types of warrants that they have, a bench, I don't know, a bench warrant or whatever. There's all sorts of nuances. And Neighbors Link has an excellent training on that. Maybe there could be some sort of resources, you know, a folder for librarians in charge.
We do have, we've given them a folder with all sorts of information and we can always add more.
Right. So I would ask that we add whatever the resource is from Neighbors Link, then, if that's okay. I seem to think that libraries are immune from ICE. I know schools are, and churches are, maybe libraries are not, but we are designated as a school building. So that alone
That's a good question. I don't know, Karen. We're not a sanctuary, are we?
I had heard, and now I haven't heard anything recently, but I had heard when things were very hot with ICE that they were not going to public libraries. You know, that they were actively, you know, like they were just deciding not to go to public libraries.
Schools are exempt and churches are exempt. I'm not sure libraries are.
No, we're not exempt. But I think that the public relations nightmare, this is just my speculation. I think that the public
it would be a nightmare. Yeah.
Sorry.
And in this community, it's people sending them to their house.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of the policy, it states that in the
That's
first
what's happening. It doesn't happen in the library.
What?
What were you saying, Amanda?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was over speaking you. I'm sorry, Shonda, but it says that the library has the responsibility of protecting the rights and privacy of our patrons in accordance with New York State Law 4509. So there must be, I don't know what that law is, but I think there must be a particular law that this is all following.
Oh yeah. No, the only thing I was saying is that the times that it has happened in this community, a person in this community directed ICE or other people to that person's home. That's what happened here. I know of 2 instances where that happened, but yeah, so it wasn't like that, you know, they were in school and they came, or they came to the lot. It was
The New York State Law 4509 essentially protects all library information that is personally associated with an individual. So that might be their computer logon records, that might be their library card history, their library card information, you know, program sign-in sheets and that kind of thing.
Oh,
The
thank you.
distinction is not that we want the library staff to defend that stipulation, that legal stance when ICE shows up, but that is really law that needs to be determined by a judge in a courtroom setting. On our premises, we're not about to start a legal argument with someone who has a warrant or is looking to come after someone. That's meant to be determined in a legal setting, not in a library.
Mm.
So that's law enforcement inquiries policy.
Okay. And then last meeting, we went over professional development and professional membership policy, and it is as we read it then and up for a second reading tonight.
I don't have
And
any
then-
questions.
Okay. And then we have down here, review board performance. That was the document which you mentioned earlier, Matt.
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
That's okay. I'm done.
Amanda, I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, and I really have to thank you so much for shepherding this committee. You're
Thank you.
amazing. I'm so grateful to you that you're doing such a good job on this and all your Excel or Word lists and stuff. It's awesome. You're really, thank you very, very much for doing the heavy lift. This is really important work.
Thank you. I'll keep
So-
doing.
You're what?
I'll keep doing it.
I know.
Okay,
I'm
Shotgun.
very, very grateful for you, to you. I'm so grateful.
Great committee.
There are no other questions or comments regarding any of the policies or bylaws. We can go on to the Finance Committee. In your handout, where there's an update on the budget, there is a favorable budget balance at this time. And the Finance Committee has not needed to meet, but after we discuss the buildings and grounds, it may become apparent that we need to strategize a little bit for budget. So Karen, did you want to introduce buildings and grounds, or did you want the committee to review our latest meeting regarding heating and air conditioning?
I can, and Cecilia, if you want to jump in, please do.
My notes, okay.
Thanks. We had a Buildings and Grounds meeting, was it last week? And we reviewed the recommendations that were put together by Jim Dolan, which he had shared with you at our last meeting. We also talked about the library spaces, the space planning that we had discussed previous to COVID, and some modular office/meeting spaces that we were thinking about doing. So I'll start with the HVAC planning. Like I said, we reviewed Jim's recommendations to us, and we sort of landed on landed in the place where we thought it would be prudent to start working towards implementing the phase 2 as Jim Dolan had outlined it for us, plus an additional piece. And of course, this is all contingent on getting the funding to do so. Phase 2 includes some cooling system implementations, which would be changing out AC4 for a new rooftop unit, which would cool large parts of the building. And if you look at Jim's drawings, you can see which parts of the buildings those would be. Installing a new mezzanine rooftop unit, which would not be replacing anything, it would be adding cooling to the building. So those two things, plus the well system controls upgrade, which would give us a way to see what's going on in the wells and perhaps preserve some of the, or avoid some of the pump burnouts that we have, which have plagued us for years. So when you look at those three things, I didn't add them all up here. The new rooftop unit 4, these are estimates, and we know estimates sometimes come in higher than we think. To do the new RTU 4, that's estimated to be $613,000. The new mezzanine rooftop unit, he's calling it RTU 6, would be $283. Those two things together would total $896,000. And in addition to that, we're looking at pursuing the well system controls upgrade, which is in his current phase 3, but we would pull that into phase 2. And the cost of that is $126,000. So that is a large chunk of money.
So we've now spent like our entire reserves.
Yeah, something like that. So our reserves, I'll get to that in just a second. I didn't transfer over the bottom line for myself. And I want to have that in front of me. 126. Yeah, so that's 1,022,000 altogether. We had discussed at the building committee meeting the possibility of bonding for that money, or of doing things and breaking it up further and doing it piecemeal, using some of our fund balance to do that money or to do that work, and in addition trying to get grant funding.
So can I just check back with you, because I can't find my notes from that, but was A5 also part of the Jim Dolan list on our punch list of items to do? So AC5, AC4, plus the well water system.
AC5, Jim shows us as doing that as part of phase 3. But he did say that we could do either phase 5, or I'm sorry, either AC5 or AC4 in phase 1. I think the recommendation to do AC4 in phase 1 is because AC4, it's more money to do that one, but it also services a larger area of the building. And so we would get more, I don't want to say bang for the buck, but we would get more cooling than we would by doing AC5.
And if I'm not mistaken, he said the lifespan on 4 is not as long as 5.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, 4 breaks down on a fairly regular basis. I will tell you that I asked Bob to update me on where we are with our fund balance, because it changes from time to time.
My computer is in the process of crashing right now. I can't open anything. So if I disappear, I'm just letting you know, because
Okay.
like everything is disappearing on my screen right now.
2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my computer's not helping me right now either. Okay, so Bob gave me the most recent balance of our fund balance. This is as of June 30th, now that we've finished up our audit. For the most part, his numbers are pretty solid. Our unrestricted fund balance is $1,603,796. And our capital fund portion of that fund balance, or I'm sorry, our capital fund in addition to that is $400,000. So the money that we would have available, and I'd want to make sure to go over this with Bob, he needs to give it out to me a little bit more detailed manner, would be something like $2 million. But that being said, we should always be very careful about how we use our unrestricted fund balance. What we do normally is we like to keep 4 months worth of operating funds on hand so that we can not have to borrow money while we're waiting for the school district to give us our tax funds. And we also know that we have an aging building that is very prone to needing large, more very expensive repairs. So we want to be very careful about what we do with our fund balance.
I'm afraid to ask you this question, Karen. So there was like a quick mention of water leaking from the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So is this going to be a big job, a little job? And can we like put roof thermal units on top of that roof?
That portion of the roof that was leaking is not the portion where the RTUs would go. That's a sloped portion of roof, just sort of directly above the mechanical room. We will need to eventually replace our roof membrane on the flat portions of the roof.
Okay.
So that is a very large job that should be on our radar starting about now.
Right, and also just for the point of clarification, so everyone realizes that when we talk about putting these units on the roof, it's a separate evaluation by a separate engineer and a separate cost to see if we can even proceed with that strategy. And it's not in the figures that were mentioned.
I have a separate question that maybe I signed up for the finance committee and it hasn't met, but when it does meet, the I had mentioned before about, you know, and the fact that Jim Dolan is actually the consultant, the person that fixes all these different issues with the building because he knows it because he designed it. That's what I understood.
Are you talking about John Tortoso?
No, I'm talking about Jim Dolan.
He only designed what we've installed regarding our furnace.
Oh, I thought that there were other fixes in the building that he was part of, the HVAC.
No, it's a new relationship. I mean, it's a couple of years now, but it's a new relationship.
Yeah.
Are you referring to Clean Air? Because we've certainly done multiple things with them over the years.
Well, like I said, maybe I'm confused about what, you know, so far what has been happening with the repairs to the building. But one of the things that, and I don't want to necessarily talk about it tonight, but I do want to bring it up, that although the library has an annual audit done, with the level of repairs that are being done to this building, at some point, I think that maybe a forensic audit might be something that should happen, so that we know that all these people that are doing all these different pieces of repairs, that we're getting what we are asking for, and it's not creating more future problems.
Well, that's a valid point. The person that has been,
Because it seems like,
so we have had some oversight with John Tortoso. The repairs that exceed a certain dollar amount have to be voted on by the trustees. And as far as reviewing if we did receive value or we did receive what we were promised, that we've largely relied on our building repairs with John Tortoso. And we brought in Jim Dolan specifically to design this new furnace, and Clean Air got that contract. It was set out to bid and it was awarded to Clean Air. So we don't have anybody that's doing any forensic accounting.
right? No, I'm not talking. I'm talking about an audit.
Okay.
Because if you were to look and say over the last decade, say, what exactly has been happening with the building, and why and who, everything that has been done. And I'm not saying at this point, because I don't know the answer. I don't know, as far as I'm concerned and what's been presented, it seems like everything that's being presented needed to be done. But
Yes.
at the same time, are the people that are doing this work creating more? And that's the question that I'm asking. Like I said, that I would like to see if we could, discuss on the finance committee, because, there's just from the little bit that I understand from what's been going on, it's a lot.
Mhm.
It's a lot of stuff has been going on with the building
Yes.
over the last decade.
Yes.
I have a
Different-
question as well. I know, Molly, I know you work a lot with the buildings and grounds. Is there like a plan? I know a lot of things come to us to vote on, but like, is there a plan of what's more like level of importance? Like, do you work on that?
Yeah, well, I tend to work on the pieces that are more, how do I describe them?
Urgent?
Interior and routine.
Oh.
Like I'm pursuing, bids to have carpeting replaced. I'm pursuing bids to have the exterior windows cleaned. When it comes to the larger mechanical issues, that's why John Tortoso was hired as a consultant when the building opened, because they were so complicated, those mechanicals. So we sort of work in tandem, but not really. But I track the interior type projects. Was that a good description, Karen?
No, I understand. I just didn't know if I know we hired him, but I was just trying to see if there was like a plan, like there was a track on like kind of what was important versus what isn't. But I got your description.
Yeah, and I think that the HVAC system often takes priority over some of the other things. I guess heat over carpeting.
Well, there's maintenance set up. There are inspections set up. That's how we knew that we had a stormwater repair that was needed. Then we get a sinkhole. And, when we do a project like HVAC, it does impact other operating portions of the building. But the reality is that we can pull together the list of the maintenance things, the list of inspections, and the resulting expenses that have occurred. And then we can also review how much we're spending with different vendors. Obviously, we spend the most money with Clean Air. They did the furnace, but they also do our heating and air conditioning repairs. And we felt over the years that there's some value in having a company with institutional knowledge. That is to say, they know our systems. They're not going to come in and say, we have to start all over. We don't like this system. They're going to support what they've done. So there's no doubt that we can review it. And what we don't have is a structure to review it. So it might not be a bad idea to try to implement something. And maybe it's just a way that we have information flowing every month to the finance committee, and they get a chance to review it. And then if they see a need, can bring it to the board. So I would pursue that with the finance committee. That's not a problem.
If I could just jump in, I mean, Karen does an excellent job at reviewing all of the building and grounds related expenditures. And we have had, extensive discussions over all the years that I've been on the board about every upgrade or every replacement or maintenance part or whatever. I mean, I feel like we've had lots of eyes on all these issues, but Karen has kept track of this. And so she's really down on this, and maybe the rest of the trustees aren't as aware of that as some of us are.
Right, but it doesn't change the question that came up. What's the priority?
No, but I'm saying that could answer a lot of the questions right there.
That doesn't answer the question, because it wasn't as far as who's keeping track. the point of what I don't, and I mean, I won't even speak for Shani, but I'll speak for myself, was we under like, who like track as far as like how it's going, not as far as like what's getting done, if it's paid, if it's not. Like, to piggyback off of what Shandi has said, like who's checking the people that we have in place more so from the inside. And that was my thing. Like, and yes, of course, Karen brings it, Molly brings it, and we vote on it. So I want to know, like, is there just almost like a project plan of how things will get done or importance, even when we have to think about proactively what may need to be redone or touched up.
I guess I wasn't clear, because I mean, that's what Karen is doing. That's exactly what she's doing. It's not just a listing of our expenses and what we've paid for, but she describes what we've done and how we arrived at that position or whatever. So go ahead, Karen.
But the difference of a forensic audit is to determine whether or not the things that have been done, not the listing and the payment of them, were these things necessary, and did they happen in a way that logical, that makes sense, and that did not cause additional expenses. And from what I don't know that.
I think if you saw what Karen produced, that's
No,
all I'm saying.
I have to say, can I jump in here? I have to say that I appreciate what Shandi is saying. You know, in a lot of these cases, we're going on faith that our vendors are doing the right thing and, you know, fixing things in a meaningful way that's going to last. But, you know, Molly and I certainly don't have the expertise to be able to walk behind them and say, yes, you did this correctly, or no, you screwed up our whole system now. You know, John Tortoso is able to do some of that with some of our systems, but not necessarily I don't think to the degree that you're talking about, Shandi. Am I sort of correct?
And like I said, sometimes I'm just saying that sometimes, you know, this is however you look at it, the beginning and end of a decade. Maybe it's a good time to just take a look at that and say, okay, yeah, all these things happen, you know, in a necessary way, and it was done properly. The vendors did what they were supposed to do, and, you know, you're good to go for the next, you know, forward plan. And like Althema is saying, because I hadn't thought about that, but I agree that on other boards that I've been on, they actually had a building and grounds plan that was, you know, list of the projections of the things that were wanted to do, and then, you know, so that you could tick off. But but what it seems like is that with the library, it's a catch-up game because there's something happening. Like I said, I don't know. I don't have the answer to it.
So are you suggesting that maybe like the grid that Amanda's been keeping for the policy committee, to have a grid for buildings and grounds?
Let Molly respond, because Molly knows.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways we're very close to that right now. But it's true that the HVAC system and the amount of money it takes does tend to sidetrack smaller projects.
Yeah, I have clarity about what Molly does because I've seen it in the report, as well as what Karen does. I understand completely because I've seen what they've written. This is something completely different. It's looking at, you know, the bigger picture, and it's looking at, you know, the expenses that are drawing the most amount of money and just doing a check on that.
Right. And to support what you're saying,
outside of somebody.
Who would check that?
Go ahead.
If I could expand on that, the finance committee was never charged to do that. That's possibly why it never happened. I think it's within the realm of the responsibility of the finance committee to review expenses in light of the way you're portraying it. And there's nothing wrong with doing it, and it might be a responsibility. So I would like to bring it up at a finance committee meeting.
And Cecilia, I totally agree. And as the chairperson of the finance, I would definitely work with Molly and Karen and whoever else to create that grid and to track things. And even, I mean, I know we can't look when the HVAC system is one of the importance when it, you know, we have to take care of it. So it may sidetrack other projects, but at least having, you know, other things written down. So that's definitely something that I have no, you know, I don't have a problem keeping track of.
Good.
Karen, could you share your list with us, with all the board?
Which
Your
list would that
projects
be?
list, your building and grounds project list that you've been maintaining for several years. Can you share that with us?
I don't
That's
think
not
I,
necessary.
yeah,
It
I don't
really
think,
isn't, Lucinda, because you were on the board when all this was happening. So that's really not necessary. That's not what we're talking
It
about.
seems to me it really relates to what you're asking for. That's the first step, is you look over that and you hire who? Who would you hire to dig deeply into it? Another Jem Dolan?
No, there are forensic accountants that do forensic audits.
We'll let the finance committee take it up and report back to the board.
Yep, good idea.
Okay. Were there any other comments or questions in that context or in the HVAC or the proposal? Perhaps Karen, if I could impose upon you to sum up what we need to take under consideration for our next step.
so for the HVAC considerations, I asked Jim Dolan to put together a proposal for his costs for putting together plans for phase 1 plus well controls. The plans would be to submit the work to SED for approval and for bidding, so that we can look at what that would cost, if that's what we'd like to do.
Okay.
Shall
So
I?
that could be this year, but it might not be till January too.
Right. Can I talk about the other thing we discussed in Buildings and Grounds Committee? So one of the projects that Molly has been working on for me is putting together some estimates for modular office and meeting room spaces. We started looking at these after we had met with the Datner group for our space planning projects, and started to think about ways that we could implement some of those recommendations a little bit more quickly. Some of the needs that we have in our building now because of COVID are a little different than before, but some of those modular spaces would be very useful in distancing the staff in a couple of areas, and also adding some potential meeting spaces, either for now or in the future. So Molly, can I turn it over to you so you could sort of talk about what we were discussing?
Yes. In looking back over the strategic plan and the space assessment that was worked on, and then coming from that, working with Datner to get their two sort of options for us, there were some things that that came up that were priorities for the public and priorities for the staff, and they had a lot to do with spaces, meeting room spaces, whether they were spaces for special programs or just additional programs, spaces for helping us provide additional technology and computer training. A lot of our public look for quiet meeting spaces for individuals or small groups. There's a real premium on the spaces we have now. And those are things that were addressed in both options of the Datner plan. In an exploration of how we could do some of these things in a sort of tiered way, we looked at modular office spaces, and there are companies that basically build off your existing walls in areas so that you're not doing total construction, you're working with the facility and the structure you have. And we identified 3 places that we thought were ideal for putting in modular walls. I want to say that one of the nice things about doing something like this during COVID is that this will allow us to space staff in such a way that we can use them as temporary office space for people who need to be moved away, who may be in crowded offices shared spaces or in spaces where there are just so many people coming and going, it's difficult to social distance. Additionally, then these spaces could be used as small meeting rooms, small conference rooms, and very little would have to change other than the interior furniture. So these spaces give us a lot of flexibility. Additionally, they do help us address some of the concerns that staff and public have raised about conference room space. And I can give you a brief rundown of where these places would be. And one of the interesting things is that they're very similar, or in some cases, the same footprints that Datner identified as potential meeting room or conference room spaces or additional office spaces. The first and the largest one would be behind the information desk, where we currently have a multicultural and Spanish collection. That would basically, those collections would be divided up and relocated in other parts of the building. And that area would become a conference room, very similar to the conference room on the second floor. Similar in terms of the amount of space available, the fact that it's basically a glass front wall, and then the space inside could be used for technology training with laptops. It could be an additional program space for teen services, children's, adults. Additionally, it can be used as quiet study space, just like we use the second floor conference room. The next space would be located alongside the adult services office in the far back corner. It basically takes over a very little used corner area and would allow us to create 2 offices that we've identified as being of use to teen services. This would put the teen services staff closer to the teen room. And additionally, if we were to relocate the teen room at some other point and we didn't need these as office spaces, they could be small, quiet study rooms. So that has a multiple use factor right there. And then the next corner is outside the business office to a certain degree. If you're familiar with the little balcony that looks over the fireplace, this is the space that's to the right, or excuse me, to the left of that as you're looking out over the balcony. And some of you I know have seen the red tape on the floor that marks off where these spaces would be. We identified that as either being a single small conference room or as 2 sort of small meeting room spaces. And during COVID time, we could also use them as potentially office spaces for staff. They actually provide a bigger footprint than the existing small conference rooms do at this time. The good news about these is that they can go up relatively quickly with very little disturbance. Right now, the lead time from the company is 10 to 12 weeks. I am waiting for some additional information from Jim Dolan, who's looking at how it would impact airflow, but it would be a matter of possibly relocating some vents and sprinkler heads, but the existing ventilation and sprinkler system would be used. There would need to be an additional installation. There would be relocating possibly of some of the pieces we have. In terms of sound control, it would be very similar to the meeting room and conference room that we have at this time. If there are loud voices and music in there, yes, you're going to hear some of it, but there is, reasonable sound control with the walls. If we were to do all of these spaces, we're probably looking at about $60,000. Compared to our AC units, I feel like that's nothing. And when you cost it out over 10 years, you're really getting a great price. One of the advantages we have now is that we already have the electrical and data ports for those spaces. So that's not an additional expense there. Another thing that I really like about this is that this is something that offers very visual value to both staff but more importantly to the public. These are things that they would come into the building and see immediately that we had addressed needs that they had raised in the past. I'm particularly excited about the idea of a second conference room on the first floor level. It has a lot of visual appeal. It has a lot of multi-function built into it. So that's really exciting to me. What I'm really hoping is that other people are excited and that we, want to move forward, tighten up the numbers and the timeline. Additionally, I'd just like to mention that soon I'll be coming at you with more of these kind of requests. A lot of things like carpeting, flooring, painting, those things have been sort of in a pending mode, partly because I was head of adult services for so long and it was difficult to drive some of these factors, especially when we had other things going on. And then COVID hit, but I'm currently gathering information about exterior repairs, landscaping, anything. What am I missing, Karen? Anything?
Painting.
Painting.
Circle work.
Yes.
Yeah. Molly, did you mention the airflow study? Just in accordance with COVID guidelines as part of that $60,000 estimate?
Yes, Jim is looking into that for us so that if there is something significant we have to change, we would. But one of the things we're doing right now with our smaller meeting rooms is we ask that people keep the doors open the entire time. And that works in some cases because we have so much less traffic in the building and people are generally, booking for quiet use anyway. When things change with COVID, then I guess the building will get noisier and people can close. The good news will be people can close the door.
Thank you.
Molly, I was wondering, I'm sure that the first thing you need to know is what your dollar number is that is available to you. So I guess after the finance committee meets, they will have an idea of how much money could be spent on the refurbishing or building these spaces, which will also require furniture. But one thought I had,
luckily we have some office furniture that we'll be able to
repurpose,
at least during COVID time. So
okay. So in going through this, is it possible to sort of prioritize what you see as being most crucial to get done, most important for the library in terms of the public image also? Because there's that whole first floor, if I'm looking at the Datner report, and that one space you want to turn behind the circulation desk into a conference room.
Yeah, it's actually behind the information desk.
Oh, information desk. Sorry, I got that wrong. Yeah. But if the first floor becomes transformed in that whole area, because you've changed the stacks, right? Am I correct with that? It's a real visual sort of interior design change that's happening.
Yes, if I combine that with recarpeting the first floor, which it desperately needs, that allows us an opportunity to, it's very motivating to relocate some of our stack and display areas and to move around some of our shelving and furniture. So basically we're expanding our, I guess what you'd call the Chiva room reading area. It allows us to open up that lower level so that visually when you walk in, you approach the circulation desk and you look off to your left, you're going to have a much clearer path that goes right to the outdoor window, which granted it's a brick wall, but it's still natural light that comes in. It allows you to see a conference room space, and it will allow us to rearrange the shelving on the first level so that it's interspersed with seating. It will allow us to highlight new books, maybe move some of the periodicals. So we have a much more open and inviting space, as well as a cleaner and brighter space. Right now we have a lot of light, natural light that's blocked by shelving. And additionally, we have a very dirty carpet. And I've been working on some drawings that I'm no designer, but I think combined with photographs and some simple drawings, I can give the entire board and the finance committee and buildings and ground committee a sense of what that space would look like. And it could happen relatively quickly. We're looking at, you know, like well, if I use the timeline from KI, you know, in 10 to 12 weeks, you could basically have redone most of the first floor.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Really
Molly,
good.
I just wanted to say that when I saw the pictures in the emails, like the schematic type drawings of what the structures look like, they have several of those in the Yonkers Library as well as the New Rochelle Library, and they're really, really nice. When you walk in, and every time I was in those libraries, people were always using them, using those spaces. So they really are nice looking, and you know, they'll be utilized.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. And if Karen, I jump in anytime. If I had to prioritize one room, it would be that conference room on the main level behind the information desk. I think that would get the most use from staff and public at the same time. Follow up to that would be the space for the teen services staff. And following that, the two smaller meeting rooms that would be on the second floor. Of course, I'd love to do it all, but there's also, you know, the whole COVID issue. But it looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel, I hope.
We do have, don't forget, we also have those two $50,000 pilot grants that we received a number of years ago that were meant to be used for a public purpose that we never specified any use for. So, you know, I don't, personally, I would love not to use the pilot money as gobbled up by the HVAC system. I would rather use that as something nice.
What was the figure again?
We've received two $50,000 pilot grants.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We haven't used those yet though, right?
Nope.
Okay, I'm having like a major computer crisis, so I'm gonna have to check out of this meeting because my son is gonna take control of my computer. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. And Molly, by the way, I don't, and Karen, the exterior artwork that goes around on the iron railing, it's just fabulous. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that was really nice. James Trapasso made arrangements for that, and I think that they did a really great job.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, one of the things that keeps me going and is so exciting is, you know, I really love the idea that when COVID has passed and we can reopen to the public, that, you know, even some of the things that are relatively minor building changes, I think a lot of what we've done is just going to make, you know, people see the library with fresh eyes and be excited to be back. And I'd really like to greet them with some things that, you know, really look spectacular.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, makes my day.
So Karen and Molly will look forward to you coming back with a formal proposal then? Are we at that point?
We need
Yes.
to, yeah,
just-
we need, go ahead,
Jim-
Molly.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're really just waiting for Jim to weigh in and possibly give us a cost estimate on, you know, what like moving air vents and things like that might cost.
Got it. So if there are no other questions on the partitions and the new space for meetings, we'll move on to the Foundation Committee. Karen, should I be yielding to you on this one?
Althema.
Ah,
Hi, we're actually gonna have a, what is, it's still the 16th, I'm lost. I know
On
we
the
have,
18th,
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I know we have one this week.
Yeah.
Calendar. We've been meeting very regularly, and so this meeting is really going to kind of try to reel everyone in and really kind of have a plan. We've been kind of going around the bin. Who do you know? Should we ask someone? Mallory's made some nice infographics for us. So, you know, this meeting, hopefully, because I did express some concerns to Karen that I didn't want the few that are interested to lose interest, thinking that we're just meeting to be meeting. So this, you know, we're really going to set like an aggressive plan to really start working on the foundation.
excellent. And we're up to the exciting part of the evening, the resolutions. The first resolution, number 57, is a holdover. It was previously submitted, but it's been amended and written to be a little clearer. I'll read it and then open the floor for discussion and comments. Resolution 57, Board of Trustees formal complaint to the WLS Board of Trustees. Resolved that for the past 3 years, the WLS Board of Trustees has neglected to uphold and honor its responsibilities to the Ossining Public Library Board of Trustees, as stipulated in Article 1, Section 2 of the WLS bylaws, which reads in part, Section 2, the principal responsibilities of the trustees shall be to act as liaisons between the system and the respective library districts, and shall become well informed about the issues and concerns of their respective libraries by remaining in contact with the local boards of trustees and directors. Now, therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Ossining Public Library registers a formal complaint with the WLS Board of Trustees that 3 years without contact with our WLS representative is unacceptable. There needs to be compliance with the WLS bylaws.
You're here.
Can I just ask a question, Matt? Why did you decide on 3 years? Because they've never done this. You've been on the board, what, 8 or 9 years? They've never done this.
Yeah, Jonathan is our rep. He came when he was first appointed 3 years ago. He attended a meeting. That's why I used 3-year term.
Hey, I don't remember meeting Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised.
I mean, I remember my first term someone came, but I don't remember anyone coming. So, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that, because it's been longer than that in my mind. That's all. I think it sounds great. I would just say long. I would say for many years. I wouldn't even say 3.
Well, if there's no other discussion or questions, I will entertain a motion to accept Resolution 57 and a second. We have and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any objections or abstentions? There being none, it carries. We can move on to Resolution 61. The approval of the professional development and professional membership policy. Resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the professional development and professional membership policy. Did anyone have any questions or need any reminders about what we discussed? We had the second reading tonight. There don't appear to be any questions or comments. I'll entertain a motion to accept in a second Resolution 61. We have both, and please indicate your acceptance of this resolution by saying aye.
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 Any objections or abstentions? There being none, it carries. Resolution 62. Oh, Karen, we should discuss this, no? Approval of the Insights for You engagement approach proposal. Before we vote on it, we'll open it up to a little bit of a background perhaps, or a summary.
Sure. So you all met Michael Holmes from Insights for You at a meeting whose date I'm not recalling at this point in time. We met with him, and we met with Pat Fitzgerald from the Ivy Group, And I think we had agreed on the evening that we felt good about Michael Holmes and his approach and what he would do for us. I included for you his proposal. His proposal could be as low as $20,000 if we choose to not have him write the long range plan for us, but go through the process and guide us through the writing of it. And as much as $30,000 if he does undertake the writing of the plan. So that was the sort of the open-endedness of the plan, of the proposal. I'm sorry, the proposal.
Were you able to get a copy? Were you able to get an example of one of his plans?
What I sent to you was an outline of the work he had done for another organization. One of my concerns was that the work he's done with other organizations tends to be of a confidential nature, and he confirmed that with me that he would not be able to send the specific plan, but he did provide me with an outline of how he approached the work with the other organization.
What's interesting though is most of the
in
time
reading
when
through
people
what-
do library board strategic plans, they're able to share a whole entire plan with you. So I can kind of understand what he's saying, but on the other hand, if something is done and people use it and they distribute it, then why can't he provide something like that to us? If
This is
other,
Yeah, because
distributed-
it becomes a public document.
I think the difference is a library long-range strategic plan is always a public document, and so it's constructed as such. The work he's done with other organizations tend to be internal board documents, diversity documents, or diversity planning documents, and that kind of thing.
but is nothing ever published? Like, isn't there an annual report or something that we can see his writing? I mean, there's nothing?
And those type of plans, no.
He doesn't have a template for a library.
Information.
No, I'm just saying that if somebody puts together, like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I had a friend once who designed annual reports for various corporations and groups and whatever. And yes, the internal documents were always private, but then once it was published, it was put on the website, it was shared. So I'm just talking about some sort of an annual report or something that he's written that's a document that could be shared with us. I thought that's what we were asking for, because everything we've gotten is an outline of something or other.
Right, that's what
So-
you did ask for, but the work that he's done has
Oh.
been of a, we're looking to work with somebody who's never worked with a library before. And
Okay.
his work has
So that
been,
means that we really probably do not want him to write the plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
But we'll have an
That
opportunity
the-
to make that decision when we get to that point.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to
Right.
suggest that we approve the initial part of this, which is to have him begin the diversity work and begin all of the meetings, all of that preliminary stuff. And then when we get to that point where we actually have to put together a plan, then we'll have to determine who is going to do that for us. I mean, maybe he can. Maybe he's able to use the old template that we have and just upgrade our plan based on everything we learned together. I don't know. Do you get a sense, Karen, that he would be able to write it once we've done all the preliminary work, or?
yeah, I do get
Yeah,
that sense.
okay.
But I do agree that the approach that we take should be that we engage his services and start the work. And once we get to the point of actually writing the plan, we make that determination, because it could be
Yeah,
that we put together so much great information that I hate to task Mallory and I with this, but more Mallory than me. It may be that
Yeah.
we feel very
Yeah.
confident that we could go ahead and write the plan. And,
Yeah.
as you know, the plan that goes out to the public is not a lengthy, huge document. It is
Right.
a list of bullet points and visions and
Yeah.
generalities and things like that. The internal documents are more detailed, and frankly, for instance, that implementation matrix that makes you all blinded when you try to read it, that was our work internally, based on the action steps that were identified by the last long range planners.
Mhm.
In reading through his proposal, I was disturbed by his estimated timetable, which was at the end of the proposal, because it was not at all realistic. And I thought, he could have updated that, and why doesn't it reflect dates that are appropriate? And now I can't find it on my phone. I'm trying to find it while we were speaking. But
Yeah, I know which piece you're talking about, Amanda. I agree with what you're saying.
Are you talking about the engagement approach proposal? Is that what you're
Yeah, the
talking about?
proposal.
it was his proposal for the work he was going to be doing. Yeah, and he
Yeah,
had
he didn't
dates in
update
there,
it. Yeah, he didn't update it.
and it's already outdated.
Karen, do you think he could update that
So-
for us?
I'm trying to
The
find it.
key,
Chris. I
it's
just
the
saw it.
key deliverables. It was in the initial set of documents that Kathy sent to us.
Right.
It's on that bottom row, I think.
No, I just had it right in front of me and now I'm not putting my hands on it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the
Where is it?
strategic plan and
I
board
haven't been able to
development
look.
engagement
I know.
approach.
I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking
and the
about.
key
Here
deliverables
it
have
is.
dates that need to be updated or whatever.
Right.
I mean, what do we want him to, and I guess I'll ask Amanda, outside of the dates being outdated, which definitely, he will fix, did you think that there were sections that needed more time to be worked on? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure out what we would be asking him outside of just definitely changing the dates that are no longer valid.
No, that was it. I just thought it was very sloppy.
Well, it might be my fault though, because I did not ask him I provided you with this document that he put together for you at the last meeting, which I think was October 26th.
Right.
So these dates reflect if we had engaged him at that meeting. I simply sent you the same document. I did not ask him to update that document for you.
Okay, that explains it then.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Other than
No, I guess
that,
once it's approved, he'll give us the updated version, which I understand that too.
Thank you. Althema, other than that, I was fine with everything.
Oh, no, I just didn't know because I know
Yeah.
I know he was really to the point with the hours and all of this. So I was just trying to see if anyone had a problem with that part.
Is it your feeling then, Amanda, that you might consider approving this based on qualifying making the corrections, or should we hold off? It will be another month if we hold off.
I'm fine with going ahead and voting tonight. Just,
Yeah, I'm inclined to go forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the only concern I have is when we had the discussion with him a month ago, he had said he wanted to get started right away. And I had said something about it. Didn't seem as if we'd be able to even get started till early January. And here it is almost Thanksgiving. So, December gets very busy. Maybe it won't be as busy as it usually is, but I just would like to know the time frame. It's not that I don't want to vote and have it go ahead, but I really would like for him to get back to us this week.
How can he give a time frame when we have not voted?
To hire him.
Something. I mean, he can't give
Well, he gave us a preliminary. He did give us a preliminary, so he was able to do that. So all he has to do is shift dates.
That you can't be there, then you just can't be there on that day.
You got to understand, I'm sure he's pitching more than one person. So at that time, he can't put all his eggs in one basket.
No, I'm just saying if he could give us an initial plan with initial dates, then he could just revise that and say, today is tomorrow, could he just revise the dates for us?
No, that's a waste of time. We're going to keep asking him to do something. How does someone continue to revise something that has not even been contracted yet?
No, I'm saying we vote tonight, we approve on it, and then tomorrow Karen contacts him and say, could you just give us some dates on how we can get started on this? That's all.
That is asking us to vote tonight. Let's go with.
Do you not want to vote tonight on this? I do. I want us to go ahead and move forward.
I have no doubt that he will give us more accurate dates if we go ahead and say we want.
Yeah, okay, but that's what I'm saying. We shouldn't wait on that. That's all. That's my point.
Are there any other questions or comments on Resolution 62, approval of the Insights for You engagement approach proposal?
No.
If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to accept and a second.
Do we
And
not
we
have to,
have-
just a quick question. Do we not have to put any money value in here? We're approving it, but we're not saying at all?
As reference to the proposal which was attached. We could amend.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm sorry.
No, that I think it's a valid question. I think that we
Usually we
could,
always have a money value attached.
I
So,
think that we could amend the wording, and before we vote on it, that would be necessary. So
see.
we would, if I remember, it was a $20,000 amount before we commit to writing it. And I would say we should put a $20,000 amount based on his quote in
Yeah.
the wording of the resolution,
Okay.
Yeah.
so that the Board of Trustees approves the
Up to and including 20,000. work
proposal. Yeah, we can say engagement approach proposal up to and $20,000 as quoted from Michael T. Holmes of Insights for You.
Yeah. Does that sound
Becky?
okay, Karen?
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, with that amendment is, and we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of Resolution 62, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? There being none, it's accepted. And I would like to make a note that Alice is not with us, so it's a 6-0 vote.
Yep.
We're up to Resolution 63, acceptance of a donation for Red Shoes Sunday, which came by way of the Scarborough Presbyterian Church, whose event Red Shoes Sunday was held in memory of Bob Menzenstein. Any questions or comments? There being none, I'll entertain a motion to accept and a second. And we have Cecilia and Shandi, and
Mhm.
all those in favor of Resolution 63, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any objections or abstentions? There being none, it carries 6-0. Resolution 64, the last on this agenda. There are some blanks. Karen, could I ask you for, I know we have the proposal in the packet.
Yes, and you know what, Matt? I worked so hard to get that proposal ready to go, but I'm going to ask you if it's okay if we table it for the next meeting, because I need to satisfy myself about something.
Okay, we have a motion to table Resolution 64, which we'll do at this time. Now, under the other topics, old business, we did discuss HVAC in buildings and grounds. We did discuss in new business, the modular office meeting room spaces in buildings and grounds. We did discuss the board evaluation and policies. The reason that the WLA membership is listed is just a point of information that you should be aware that the trustees, I guess the whole library, including the trustees, is a member of WLA. Is that right, Karen?
All of the trustees and many of the library staff, not all of the library staff, we give people the option.
Okay, I wanted everybody just to be aware of that. Were there any other topics? Do we need executive tonight, Karen?
Briefly, that's it.
Okay, before we go to exec, was there anything anyone wanted to ask or comment about?
I do. I just want to know, in light of like the COVID numbers going up, where are we with having to close? Like, what are the new guidelines? I see, the school's closing a couple of days and places are closing, like, Mount Vernon, Port Chester. Like, where are we in that, in all of that? Or what are our, what is our baseline before we make the decision?
So unfortunately, we don't get very much guidance at all as to what we should be looking at, what we should be doing, at what level. The library directors and myself get together on a weekly basis and we share what we're doing, what we think is best, what we're hearing from our governing bodies and so forth. Where I am right now is we're moving towards moving some of the staff who can work from home back to work from home on an all or partial basis, probably within the next week or so. Some of us won't be working from home as much as others because we're needed on site. Right now, we're maintaining the services that we currently have, but if things become bad, and I don't know what the definition would be of bad, it's basically what we put together based on the information that we hear from the governor and the county executive and the Department of Health, et cetera. The first thing I would suspend would be browsing hours. I'd like to try to maintain curbside and library by appointment as long as we can, because I think that those two services are very, very manageable. And of course, we would continue to do all of our virtual programming. That can be easily done from either the library or from home. One thing that we know now that we didn't know then was we are considered essential employees as library employees. So we can, in fact, continue to operate as long as we can operate at a safe level within whatever orders the governor sets for us. So if the governor says government agencies have to do, 50% work from home, 25% on site, or, whatever they say, we can do that, but we can still try to operate as best as we possibly can. What probably will start to happen, we're seeing it happen already, is that we'll be hit by waves of staff quarantine. So people may not be testing positive for COVID, but they may be very much affected by quarantines that they're having to follow because they've been exposed at their other workplaces or through children or whatever. So right now we have one individual out on quarantine, but I can see as things go, we may end up looking at staffing shortages. So we've been talking at the department head level about some additional cross training so that we could at least keep some of our basic on-site services going.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I also just have a quick question about, so who, it seems like we have a really strange periodical collection. Who's working on that?
Strange in what way?
When I look at it, it's not like I see either magazines that like I might see on a newsstand or magazines that I might see, hear about different articles in the news. I don't see things that there's a magazine.
You're breaking up a lot, Shandi. I'm sorry.
Magazine. Oh, okay. Is there yacht mag? Let me put it in a.
Are there specific magazines or various publications that you would like? Because you can always make suggestions or recommendations if there's something you want to see. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There are parts of the collection that, really expanded because people did request them. A couple of years ago, we added a lot of yoga, mindfulness, expanded in that area. A lot of, I would say a lot of what we look for has come from patron suggestions. We also use a book called Magazines for Libraries, a big reference volume that comes out every other year. And it especially provides reviews of new publications. So some of them we've added through that. And of course, over the years, a lot of publications have gone online and, things that were, standbys for many, many years we don't have a print subscription to because they stopped publishing in print.
Right. We try to make our magazine and periodical
Do
collection.
we access?
Go ahead, Shandi.
No, I was going to say, can we see magazines online through, the online services?
Not in the same nice way that you can sort of flip through them. There are some magazine services that for libraries that offer more of that magazine type of reading experience. WLS, through WLS, we have a subscription to one of them, and I can't remember what it's called, but it gets very, very low usage, which to me means it's not a really good product. We do have access to a lot of magazine articles through the online databases, but there you have to be looking for the specific article. It's not like flipping through a magazine.
Okay.
But if you have things that you'd like to see, just let us know, because we think of the periodicals, it's not like a typical research periodicals collection like we used to do. We think of it as more of a patron interest sort of collection. So if we have areas of interest that we're missing, it's always good to be able to fill those in.
Okay.
Karen, there are a number of different activities going on in the library with either under the category of diversity or cultural equity. And some of them I was wondering, would the librarians feel uncomfortable if we attended as board members? Like this coming Thursday, there's a talk on this book, Stamped Racism, Anti-Racism in You, a virtual book discussion. And then there's also on Saturday a talk cultural book group, and they're doing There Was a Country. So I think this also falls into that category.
I will tell you that our staff really like it when trustees come to programs.
Okay. That's all I needed to know.
So at this time, if there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to end this portion of our meeting in a second, and at the same time vote to go into exec. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
And a second. And we can stop recording that, and all those in favor of leaving exec and adjourning our meeting tonight, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Any objections or abstentions? There being none, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much for a very long and fruitful meeting. Everyone
Thank you,
stay
Matt.
well.
Take
Record
care.
was still on.
Good night.
Bye.
The record was
Bye-bye.
still on. The
Happy
record
holidays.
button was still on.
Thanksgiving.
No, I just turned it back on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it was off. Don't worry.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.